All right, everyone, welcome back for another deep dive.
Yeah, glad to be back.
Today, we're going to be talking about something that's pretty important and pretty foundational to any industry, really.
Yeah, for sure.
Um, and we're going to be looking at specifically the construction industry through the lens of occupational health and safety.
Right.
And we have a great document here. It's from the Gold Seal Training Series. It's all about how construction managers can be really effective in addressing OHS concerns.
Absolutely.
And,
Yeah.
you might be thinking, okay, safety, sounds a little dry, maybe a little boring,
Yeah.
but trust us, it's way more than just rules and regulations. It's impacting everything from, your project deadlines to a company's reputation, even worker happiness.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, especially when we're talking about Gold Seal certification, which, we'll get into a little bit later.
Right.
But it's a non-negotiable skill.
Yeah, so let's start there then. What is Gold Seal certification for those who aren't familiar?
Yeah, so Gold Seal certification, it's a really prestigious, nationally recognized standard here in Canada within the construction industry.
Right.
And it demonstrates a high level of competence and professionalism.
Right, and it's kind of a, if you're, up and coming in the construction management world, or even you've been at it a while, it's a great thing to have under your belt.
Absolutely. I mean, it really shows that you are, what they call a cut above.
Yeah.
And, that you take this stuff seriously.
Yeah. So when it comes to addressing OHS concerns,
Hmm.
it's not just a box to tick on your way to getting that Gold Seal certification.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely not.
It's proof that you're really a leader. You can, manage risk effectively, and that you're committed to the best practices of the industry.
Yeah. I mean, it really shows that you are, committed to not just your own personal development, but the development of the industry as a whole.
Right. And the well-being of all the workers.
Exactly.
So yeah, it's what separates the good from the great in construction management, I would say.
I would absolutely agree.
Yeah. So let's get into this activity that is addressing OHS concerns.
Okay.
So what are some of the key components that are laid out in this Gold Seal document?
Well, the first one that they talk about, and this is what I really like, is risk identification and assessment.
Okay.
So it's this proactive approach to safety,
Right.
right? It's all about spotting those potential dangers before they become problems.
Right. Like, it's one thing to react to a problem, but it's another thing to prevent it in the first place.
Absolutely. And, we all know in construction, things can happen
Yes.
quickly.
Yeah.
So it's really important to make sure that you are on top of that and that you are, doing those regular site inspections, looking for potential hazards.
Right. So what kinds of things are we talking about here? Like, are we talking about, electoral hazards, fall risks? What are we looking for?
Yeah, all of that stuff, right? So you're looking for anything that could pose a threat to worker safety. So that could be, like you said, electrical hazards, fall risks. It could be things like, improper use of equipment, making sure that you're checking the equipment regularly to make sure that it is up to code.
Yeah. And this is happening like on a daily basis, or how often are we talking?
Yeah. I mean, ideally, you're doing this on a daily basis,
Yeah.
right? You're walking the site. You are looking for these things.
Why?
And, really making it part of your routine.
Okay, cool.
And then beyond the site inspections, you're also doing hazard analyses.
Okay.
So you're really delving deep into those hazards, assessing the likelihood of something happening, the potential severity of that hazard, and then figuring out, okay, how do we mitigate this?
Yeah. So it's almost like a risk matrix, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
You've got the likelihood of it occurring, the consequences if it does occur, and then, what steps can we take to reduce that risk?
Exactly.
Okay.
And then, we can't forget about compliance with regulations, right?
Right.
So it's not just about, what we think is safe. It's also about what is legally required.
Yeah, for sure. And that can vary a lot depending on where you are in the country.
Absolutely. Yeah. So you have, your local regulations, your provincial, your
Yeah.
federal,
Right.
and it's important to be aware of all of those and to make sure that you're following them, because ultimately those regulations are there to protect people.
Right. Yeah. The why behind the rules is super important.
Exactly.
And, we should mention that there are some really important documents out there like CCDC 2 2020 and CCDC 11 2019 that outline some of these expectations.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, these are, legally binding contracts.
Right.
And they really lay out what is expected in terms of safety within the industry.
Cool. So we've talked about identifying risks. We've talked about, making sure we're following the rules. What's next?
Well, then you got to train people, right? You got to make sure that people understand the risks and that they know how to work safely.
Right. Because like you said, the best safety plan in the world doesn't matter if people don't know what it is.
Absolutely. And, I think this is one of those areas where sometimes people fall short, right? They'll put together a great safety plan, but they won't actually take the time to properly train their workers.
Yeah. Or to create an environment where
Yeah.
people feel comfortable speaking up if they see something unsafe.
Absolutely. And that's so important, right? You want to create that culture of safety where people feel like they can speak up without fear of reprisal.
Yeah, you want them to feel empowered to, be part of the safety solution.
Exactly.
So what kind of things are we talking about here when we're talking about training and awareness? Like how does that actually happen?
So, there's your typical, safety training sessions that happen maybe when somebody first starts a job.
Right.
But you also want to be doing things like toolbox talks.
Oh, yeah.
Those regular meetings where you're just talking about, specific hazards that might be present on that site.
Right.
Maybe there's a new piece of equipment that's being used. You want to make sure that everybody knows how to use it safely.
Yeah, I like it.
And then, it's also just about, having those conversations with people on a regular basis, making sure that safety is top of mind.
Yeah, making it part of the company DNA, so to speak.
Absolutely.
So, we can do all the planning in the world, we can train people, we can follow all the rules, but sometimes, accidents do happen. So what happens then?
Well, that's when we get into incident reporting and investigation.
Okay.
And this is a really important part of the process because it's not about blame, right?
Right.
It's about learning from those mistakes and preventing them from happening again.
Yeah, because I could see how some people might be hesitant to report an incident for fear of, getting in trouble.
Yeah, absolutely. And, that's why it's so important to create that environment where people feel comfortable reporting things.
Right.
Because, if we don't know about it, we can't fix it.
Yeah, for sure.
So when an accident does occur, it's really important to thoroughly investigate it to figure out, okay, what were the root causes of this?
Right.
And then how can we make changes to prevent it from happening again?
Yeah, so it's almost like that, continuous improvement loop. You're always learning, you're always getting better.
Exactly.
Okay, cool. So we've talked about, reacting to things after they've happened.
Yeah.
But this Gold Seal document also talks about preparing for the unexpected. So what do they mean by that?
Yeah, so they're talking about emergency preparedness, right?
Okay.
So, we've all done fire drills.
Yeah.
We know what to do in case of a fire, but what happens if there's a chemical spill?
Right.
What happens if there's a severe weather event?
Yeah, you got to have a plan for that.
Absolutely. And so it's really important to think through all of those different scenarios and to have plans in place
Right.
so that if something does happen, people know what to do.
Yeah, and not only know what to do, but they've had maybe some practice or some training.
Absolutely. Yeah. You want to make sure that people are trained on those procedures so that in the moment, they're not trying to figure it out.
Right. Yeah, you don't want to be learning on the fly when there's an emergency situation.
Exactly.
So is that all the key components, or is there anything else that we're missing?
There's one more really important piece, and this is all about consultation and feedback.
Okay.
So this is about creating a work environment where workers feel empowered to speak up, share their concerns and contribute to safety solutions.
Right. So it's not just a top-down approach
Yeah.
where, the safety manager is dictating everything.
Exactly. It's about creating that two-way dialogue
Yeah, I like it.
where you're actually listening to the workers because, let's be honest, they're the ones who are out there on the front lines.
They're the ones who are actually doing the work.
They're the ones who are actually doing the work. They know what the hazards are. They know what the risks are.
Yeah, for sure.
So you want to tap into that knowledge.
Yeah. Yeah, and make them feel like they're, part of the solution.
Exactly.
Cool. So this all sounds really great in theory, but let's get down to, the nuts and bolts of it.
Okay.
Like, what are the real world benefits of having such a robust OHS program?
Well, first and foremost, you're going to reduce accidents and injuries.
Yeah.
And, workplace accidents can cost companies millions of dollars.
Right.
Not just in direct costs like medical bills and workers' compensation, but also in things like lost productivity,
Yeah.
project delays, damage to equipment, all that stuff.
So it really does hit the bottom line.
Absolutely.
But it's not just about saving money, is it?
No, it's not.
It's also about legal compliance, right?
Absolutely.
Like if you're not meeting those safety standards, you could be facing some pretty hefty fines.
Yeah. You could be looking at lawsuits and criminal charges in some cases.
Wow.
So it's really important to do things right from the start.
Right. Yeah. It's about you doing the right thing, not just the legally mandated thing. And what about a company's reputation? Does that come into play as well?
Absolutely. In today's world, reputation is everything, right?
Yeah.
People
Yeah.
want to work for companies that they know are going to take care of them.
Yeah,
Clients want to work with companies that they know are going to do things safely and effectively.
for sure.
So, having a good safety record really builds that trust and credibility, and ultimately it strengthens your brand.
Yeah, it creates that kind of virtuous cycle, right?
Exactly.
Safety leads to better outcomes, which leads to more success.
Absolutely.
And it all starts with taking OHS seriously.
100% agree.
So whether you're building skyscrapers or just tackling a DIY project at home, the takeaway is clear safety matters.
Yes.
It's not just about rules and regulations. It's about creating a culture of responsibility, well-being, and ultimately success.
Yeah, well said.
So here's a thought-provoking question to leave you with.
Okay.
We've been talking a lot about construction today, but how can these same principles be applied to other industries?
Hmm.
What small changes can you make to promote safety in your own workplace or community?
Yeah, that's a great question.
Yeah, it's something to think about. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into occupational health and safety. Until next time, stay curious and stay safe.
Thanks for having me.
Of
It's
course.
a great conversation.
Yeah, absolutely.